Welcome, everyone, to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators, and today, actually, I'm going to honor myself a little bit somehow. We're going to do a reaction to my episode last year with Peter Bleakley, and right now with me is Emily Grayson. Welcome to the show,
Hello.
Emily.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Emily has a new project, and I'm going to have her describe what it is. I just saw a video of it earlier today, and you can tell us what you're going to do, and then we'll get to some of your predictions.
All right. So I run the Come Follow Me Facebook group where we look at the weekly lessons from the church, and we kind of try to break it down and take the positive things from it, hopefully, and give a little bit of education. And that's kind of turned into this other thing that I'm starting to do. I'm now on Instagram and Facebook, and it's called Spirit and Psyche. And it's basically where heart and mind both meet. So we look at secular and sacred. We look at as much information as we can, and we figure out as close to the truth as we possibly can, examining the spiritual side of things and the logical side of things.
So like a rational approach to spirituality.
Yes, it's a very rational approach to spirituality. So I would say it's intellectual agnosticism.
Okay. Well, thanks for hopping on in short notice. And go ahead and let's have you tell us what some of your, I set this up as crazy conference predictions, and we'll see if you're crazy or if yours come true. I don't know.
Mine are not going to come true within a few days. But here are a couple that I kind of hope would be within the future, maybe in the next 10 years, maybe in the next 50 years. I don't know. My predictions are that they will raise the age of baptism or allow baptism to happen in the individual's own time, or encourage teaching without indoctrination. So here are the facts, here's what we believe, and when you're ready, and if you would like to accept it in your own time, then you may join the church. Another prediction.
Yeah, really, right now, it's kind of like social promotion, just like if you just live through first grade, you automatically go to second grade now. And that's sort of the way. If you turn 8 in church, you're kind of expected to get baptized.
Yeah, and they really don't know at that age. I have a daughter who just got baptized, and I allowed her to do that. I'm in a mixed faith marriage, and talking to her and really asking very open-ended questions and trying to present it in a way of what she believes, what's coming from her. I don't want to lead her in any way. And they just really don't know at that age.
Right. So the age of consent would be good for you.
Yes. In an effort for the church to apparently appear a little bit more mainstream Christianity, I think that if they're going to try and do that, then they have to allow members to approach their faith the same way that others do in mainstream Christianity or even Catholicism, because you can be Catholic, you can be Protestant, you can be all these things, and you don't have to go to church every single Sunday. You can practice your faith in your own way within these groups. I just heard recently that I never really even focused on the number, but when you have your questions for the temple, when you have your interview questions with the bishop, there's 13 questions and there's 13 very specific answers. And to think that your eternal salvation, your eternal future depends on 13 questions and giving the right 13 answers, I feel like is just extremely specific and doesn't allow for a personal spiritual journey.
Yeah.
If we can create a safe space to say what we really feel in church, say, like, we don't have all the answers. We have faith and we hope for these things. We don't know because nobody can actually know. Then I think that being able to discuss these things without judgment can actually create an atmosphere of spiritual growth.
Sounds good.
And then the last one is, I would really hope that missionaries would not pressure people to be baptized, like by that third lesson. I think that there needs to be more informed consent for investigators. I think that they need to know a little bit more about the religion, maybe spend a little bit more time going to church. And it would be really great if missionaries would focus on service over conversion, because when you show up authentically, you feel that as a missionary, and the other people, the people in the community are going to also feel that.
Okay. I know that the Jehovah's Witness have their converts try to learn things for a year, and they want everybody fully prepared and educated in their scriptures and what their beliefs are. And the Mormon Church basically has had the missionaries just say, hey, do you want to get baptized? Does it feel good? Do you like that we're love bombing you? And then people get baptized, and then they find out a lot of stuff later. It's sort of like there's some flirt to convert. There's some, befriending and love bombing that goes on, and it is not very consensual.
Yeah. And it's that whole, we do this for the Lord, this is a good thing that we're doing, because anything for the salvation of souls. In my presentation this past week, we focused on salvation and what that means across for the different main religions around the world. And even for Judaism, they don't actively look to convert people. But if you spend enough time, like you said, in the religion, studying it out, and you really want to convert, then they'll say, okay, let's look at this and let's work with you. I don't know if I'm frozen or if you're frozen.
So I think I'm having a little hiccup with my computer every now and then. We got some new service in recently, and it probably froze up for me.
Okay.
And so anyhow, yeah, informed consent and full disclosure. If we have these things and buying real estate, why not where the celestial worlds are concerned? Right. So anyway, thanks, Emily. Have a great time the rest of this day, and I can't wait to see your project unfold for us all.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Bye.
And Randy's here now. So
yes, I am.
I had sent Randy the wrong link, and if anybody in the audience wants to hop on the show and talk, what we're going to do is we're going to have like a reaction video to a video that I did last year with Peter Bleakley, and we're going to go through the things and see what happens. So Randy, I don't know if you got a chance to hear Emily, but I met Emily at Thrive in St. George.
Oh.
And she has a project going, and you'll be able to re-listen to it later, and I'll tell you more later, and we'll see, because I think you'd be interested in what she has to say. Maybe you could be a guest on her, whenever she's doing something. She said it wasn't necessarily a podcast; it's more like a project, but we'll see. So I'm going to include a link to the show in the description right now for people, and I'm going to add to the stage me and Peter. And last year, Peter and I did a show. And Randy, what we're going to do is, unless you want to say something for the first couple of minutes on your own, I'm going to play this, and then you say when to stop, and you want to hop in on something, and we'll freeze it, and we'll let you add some of your comments. And if anybody else has comments, we'll display them in the chat and the screen. And we also have another guest coming. Are you ready to come in, Kendall? So Kendall's going to watch with us for as long as he can as well.
There's Kendall.
Yep.
Hi, Kendall.
Somehow Kendall was robot-y, and I'm not sure if it's my computer or if something is going on with from his end.
He does sound like a robot.
Yeah. And so I don't know if it's the whole thing that's going on here. I'm going to set up this show to go a little bit faster. Peter has a British accent, so if people need me to slow it down, we could slow it down later. And let me see what happens now. So, Kendall, can you talk? So Kendall now seems frozen. That's not good for audio, for quality. So I'm going to start playing the tape, and then Kendall maybe can leave and come back in, or can you hear us now, Kendall?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, now you sound perfectly 100% good. I'm going to start this other show from a year ago, where we basically, it's the idea is things that aren't going to come true this weekend, but maybe in 20 years or maybe 50 years. But we're going to watch it, and then if you want to comment, just say, hey, I want to comment or something, and then we'll go from there. Welcome everyone to Latter Daily Digest, and
welcome to Mormon Civil War.
That's right.
It's a great collaboration.
Our channels are teaming up to have crazy conference predictions. And the reason why we're going to do this is we're going to say, what would a really good Mormon church look like, and what changes would have to be made? And maybe they're going to announce these changes at conference someday.
Absolutely. What would it look like? They're going to have to if they want to survive.
So
we figured it all out, Gene.
Let's start from the very, very top. Maybe I'll make a first suggestion, a first prediction, that they're going to announce the quorum of the 15 is going to have age limitations, and they will retire the quorum of the 15 at some age. I don't know, what's a good age? 75, 80? They usually are still healthy.
I think 75.
If you're using ChatGPT but don't know how to monetize it, watch this video to the end. All right, step one.
Because
that's a penny for me. I just made a penny.
So what's the problem? No, I mean, well, you might, because it's so hard for them, because they've got so lucky and probably feel chosen by destiny to make it up all those ranks and ranks and ranks of priesthood, to be chosen from the 70 usually, or wherever they come from, and then to be able to actually get within touching distance of being the prophet.
We might have
you don't give that up easily.
We might have to call that position something like a member of the Golden High Council. We attach some superlative to it so that it sounds like they've made it.
An honorary status. Yeah, because I think, well, the situation we have now is inevitably, as soon as Brigham Young introduced longevity of service as the criteria for being an apostle and then having a chance of being the prophet and president of the church, it was inevitable that within a few decades or whatever, you would start having most of your prophets are dying old men. So at the end, they're exhausted, they're tired, they're very much out of touch with the needs of the modern world. And the whole point of having living prophets is meant to be to have them speak to that. And I think for me, the clincher in disabusing myself of the idea that, but you want the people with the most longevity and experience in leadership, which is the church's big excuse, was a really good article in the Ensign a few years ago, which pointed out that this church was founded and became a global phenomenon by young single adults or young adults, people in their 20s and early 30s.
And women.
They cranked out scripture like confetti. They coped with all kinds of crises and moved forward. They held on to a kind of a vision. Yeah.
I remember when I was 21, I knew everything. I knew it all. There was no doubt.
Yeah.
Hey, Gene, can you hang on a minute here? So are you saying that you don't think the top 15 are young and virile anymore?
I don't have their prescriptions to a little blue pill or anything, but all I know is at 65, they're a requirement.
So we're virility free. No virility in the leadership.
Yeah, and like we were saying on some other show, the average age of church leadership in the first 50 years was under 50 almost the whole time until they all got old. And so anyhow, but since then it's been a geriocracy or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that they're all having a contest to see who can live the longest. And
maybe Kendall, we can hear your clicking, so you can mute yourself until you're ready to say something, and that'd be probably a better way of going.
Okay, good to know.
What do you think about my golden council?
Yeah, that would match how old they are. I think that is appropriate.
They're in the golden age for sure.
Of councils, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, I'll start this back up again.
More fun than 80-year-olds who are sure they know everything.
So what would be a good next?
So yeah. Okay, so we're going for emeritus status for apostles like they do for the 70s. Otherwise, we waste so much time. We're getting, they all descend into dementia, nearly all of them, for years even. I was sent on a mission with a mission call signed by a machine, pretending to be a prophet who I went to testify was leading the church in the modern age. And he was in a coma, it turned out later, with, President Benson. That was, that's just wrong. That's shameful. So I love that idea. I think priesthood, we have to ordain women, simple as, the recent revolution in response to Annette's, what's her surname? Whoever she was, of the Relief Society General Presidency.
Dennis.
Saying,
Dennis,
that's it. Always throws me when someone's second name is the first name. Where she said that, women in the church are, more women get more empowered than in any other church, which was clearly ludicrous because they don't have any kind of equality with men in anything. And as various people pointed out, there's no decision a woman can make in the church that can't be overruled by a man in their church roles. And
it's kind of disingenuous for people to say that, well, even men can have their decision overruled by men that are higher up. So it's almost equal, except for the very top.
Yeah, isn't real. I think in a sense she had a point that we do involve everyone in ministry. I think that is a real plus of our church, and I spent quite a lot of time being around and worshiping with Christians and other denominations, and I love that because what I see there is your whole congregation is very much tied to the opinions and worldview and personal style of an individual vicar or minister or priest. And I've seen churches in my community just disband or lose their congregation overnight because that person moved to a different place or died and people didn't like the new person. And it was far too much influence and power for one human to have, which is a lesson for us with our prophet. And also, I think it kind of drives you a bit mad. You have expertise. So you might have people in the way most Christian churches organize themselves. You'll have a worship leader. And that's their job, the music and the singing and leading that. You will have someone who's in youth ministry and they do lots of training and get really expert at that. But that's what they're doing for decades. And I think they just get stale.
Can I jump in there, Gene?
Can you imagine? I mean, I know it's a bit different in the international church where we're so short of people. I've had probably about 20.
Here's the thing. Have you any idea why we have not introduced women as leaders yet in the LDS church? And when I say we, I don't mean we, because why they, I better said, have not introduced feminine leadership. My theory is that men are intimidated. If you've ever watched a party, they're starting to get ready for a ward party. What you have are a lot of men sitting around talking, twirling their thumbs. Then when the Relief Society gets there, or when the ladies get there, that's when everything starts. That's when they start buzzing around, getting the kitchen going, getting the refreshments out. You see them scurrying. And unless they prod their husbands, you don't see the husbands get up. The women take care of business and they're on it. It's like, I think I made this comment before, having been a cop. A lot of the male cops don't want women on the force because they're a little intimidated. Women are better shots than they are. That's a scientific proven fact. They get things done and they don't complain. And I think that it's all about intimidation because you know dang well that the prophet could have a revelation anytime he wants that, oh, guess what? It's time to include women, but he doesn't. I just wanted to get your thoughts on why the hell not?
Oh, I have some thoughts.
I have thoughts.
Let's hear.
Welcome, Dave. We'll let Dave do his thoughts on that.
Right.
Hey, Dave.
I don't think the church is going to go the route of women leadership and ordaining. I don't. And the reason for that is, one, that's going to be a indirect, basically backtrack of doctrine, right? Because the priesthood keys historically have come through men. The church prays to the Heavenly Father, not the Heavenly Mother. And then if all of a sudden women were to be ordained, that would be an indirect challenge to the historical doctrine, and that could cause more problems than going with the status quo. The second reason, and I brought this up before, especially since I'm moving overseas in under 2 weeks, the majority of members are outside the U.S., not inside the U.S. So ordaining women in the United States and in European countries, that would be applauded. Africa, no. Southeast Asia, no. There are many countries around the world where the gender roles and the cultures are far more socially conservative than what we have now, even with the current administration. And if they were to do that, that would alienate the majority of the membership. They would just, no, it won't fly in the culture. Same thing with why they haven't gone the route of LGBTQ ceilings in the church, because the majority of countries, it's either banned, like where I'm moving to, Mongolia, it's outright illegal, or it's just not legally recognized. So those moves would cater to the minority of members from the global standpoint. And sure, it would cater to people who left, but it's not the majority.
Right. Okay, Kendall?
Yeah, no, that hit on most of the points I wanted to say. Just bouncing off something Randy said, who here is familiar with the leaked tapes of all the Quorum of the 12 Apostle meetings, like with Gordon Smith and all those trainings that they did?
Yep.
So have you watched those, and have you watched how the brethren interact with each other and what questions they ask?
It's a corporate boardroom, and they talk about the enemies of the church being the intellects and the feminists.
Yeah, think of how the dynamic would change if women were in those meetings. Would they get to theorize about who's gay and who's got an agenda and all this stuff that the brethren in those meetings were shown to just kind of waste time and show their prejudices and biases and stuff? I mean, they would be intimidated. I think Randy's exactly right that introducing women would make the good old boys club have to actually do some work.
That would be the real Mormon shrivel would occur then, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
they don't want them in their club. Basically, you hit it on the head, Kendall. And Dave.
That's a big part, but there is, global dynamics that the church is dealing with too. So I'll go ahead and restart this.
That being said, I do have to say that I think the church will move in that direction. I think it'll be a long, slow arc.
Teaspoons. There'll be teaspoons of priesthood to look forward to. Like maybe the girls get
I think one day they'll get top leadership even, but maybe they'll do it in a weird way, because I do not think they will allow a woman to actually become prophet. So maybe they'll have to have a separate designation. But I just know with the Gen Z being 20% activity rate with Gen Z right now, they have to change something. They are quaking in their boots.
They have to do something for the future of the church. Okay.
Yeah, they are leaking
almost everything.
Women.
You'd just get bored out of your mind if you're going to be young men's president for 10 years or more, or the rest of your life, or just the music leader. So I do love that we involve everyone who's active in ministering and teaching and leadership roles in youth. I think that's brilliant. And that women are involved in that hands-on ministry.
And think about the work that can be done. The work that can be done by doubling the number of priesthood holders.
You ever heard of Airbnb? Well, imagine doing the exact same thing with RVs, except you don't actually have to deal with
over another penny,
a short period of time.
Yeah.
And this would be a very good conference to announce that, because our brothers in the gospel of the community of Christ announced that their next president will be a woman. And so this would be the perfect conference for that to be announced.
Yeah, and I think it was it 40 years ago they gave women the priesthood. So they've been at it for 40 years.
The middle 80s, right? 85 or so, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And
so
I mean, milestone marker.
One of the Community of Christ Emeritus Apostles is British, and I'm on a mailing list, and I get a weekly update of what sort of they're offering online here in Britain. And they had a 40th sort of anniversary celebration recently. Yeah, so I think definitely, the feminism is back. It's just unsustainable where, as people keep saying, if the LDS Church is the only institution in people's lives of any age group, we usually think about the young people, certainly, but our age, any age, where women are not equal, they don't have any access to decision-making leadership roles. They are patronized heavily. They're still in the family proclamation, this idea that a woman's place is primarily in the home as a wife and a mother. This is also outdated. And it's just not sustainable. And it's remarkable how many people leaving the church now are saying the trigger for them was simply having a daughter. That they had a daughter or their daughter's coming up to youth, and they just resolved, especially their mothers, I cannot have my daughter go through what was done to me. The messaging about my second-class status, my subservience, my that I shouldn't have a place as an equal in the whole of politics, the world, social, business, all of that. That ultimately my only value is if I can crank out children and look beautiful.
That's right. And all you need to do is you can use the same announcement where when the restriction on blacks in the priesthood was used, except you just take out male. You say all worthy members of the church could participate in that. And kind of a corollary to that would be allowing LGBTQ access to temple blessings of eternal marriage.
Yeah. I think that's the other one, isn't it? This is the big issue of our day. And I'm kind of intrigued because I'm very conscious. I've been having a few conversations for the first time in a while with other Christians and sort of their worldview. One of them particularly was quite fundamentalist, young earth creationist Baptist. And you sort of, it seems crazy, but Mormonism is almost ahead of the curve a bit compared to a lot of Christian denominations in agonizing over this. Most churches have to some extent. The Pope is blowing people's minds by offering, I think the idea of blessing same-sex relationships, but certainly liberalizing significantly on this matter. The Church of England 20 years ago just tied itself up in knots and just about averted schisms to ordain women, but they are now grappling with a potential schism over LGBTQ ordination. They will allow non-practicing LGBTQ people to be clergy, but if they're in an active sexual relationship, that's a no-no. And the fact that we've I know it's in the post-Mormon space, but the fact that the debate around this is so intense and strong in Mormonism almost feels like we're catching up for once on a major social issue, and our conversations to some extent are matching or going a bit beyond those in some other fundamentalist Christian denominations. So I think that's quite exciting because we've got so much precedent for having made epic changes of things that never seemed they'd change, like polygamy or not ordaining black people. So
hey, Gene.
I think this is something we can do, and certainly it's again one of the
So going along the lines of what Dave said and Kendall, it almost feels like all of these restraints that are being used by the top 15 of becoming more progressive are simply a way to retain membership. I think they fear that anything progressive enough to allow women, which is just nuts to even say, to allow women in this day and age to become leaders or LGBTQ plus. I think they're afraid of the members running, the members dropping away.
That was going to be, somebody brought that up in the comments, and that's where I'll give some respectful pushback, is I think they want a schism. I think they want these people to leave. We see that with the various policies that have come out and how members treat it, right? And this kind of goes back to my global perspective here, right? Because Christianity as a whole has gone down in the Western nations for similar things, right? And you mentioned that they are leaking members. So in order to speed up the process, I can honestly see them kind of, especially with Oaks possibly becoming prophet and getting more involved, I can see them going the route of saying, you know what, we're going to double down on the status quo. And if people want to leave, they can leave. We'll excommunicate more people, because I've been, there are rumors been going around about more excommunications, and I've heard some of that too. So that it's basically a way to get the dissidents out.
That's right. Triangulation followed by the modern Mormon Trump.
Exactly. You just, zero in on the dissident group, whatever means necessary they're going to use to get them out. And then people in the rest of the world won't even know this happened in the first place because they don't pay attention to US gender dynamics and things like that. They'll still be, going to sacrament meeting in like Africa, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, and again, those cultures, like Africa is the number one. Africa is really the only place where the church is growing statistically, right? So that's kind of their focal point from what I'm seeing.
Well,
so my guess is where I'm going.
You've got to wonder, how long can they keep that up? There's either one of two ways they can go. What you're saying, Dave, they can keep the status quo going, or what if they suddenly said, okay, let's get this all over with. Let's be Christ-like and love everyone, and throw a little publicity, here and there about how they are becoming more Christ-like by allowing these people, and
by
whoever's going to leave,
billions of advertising dollars.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and let the new membership flow in, and out with the old if they choose to decide it's not true.
I think it would turn into
being on the cutting edge, or being 30 years in advance of the rest of the world instead of 30 years behind.
Exactly, because it can't go on forever.
I mean, well, I would respectfully argue it can. You look at Islam. I mean, that's still going strong. You have people willingly convert to Islam, and in some cases, radical forms of Islam. They willingly choose to join Islam. I'm a member of the Hindu faith, and Hinduism is very conservative. That has not changed at all for almost 4,000 or 5,000 years. You have Orthodox sects of Christianity and Judaism that have been around, and they're still going along. I think that if they do go the route that you're suggesting, I think they're going to turn more into like the community of Christ, and that can backfire in another way.
But with money.
Yeah. I mean, they do have the money, but I mean, like, from what I've been hearing, the community of Christ membership is down, even though they have the progressive things. Like, they've been losing members too. I don't know if that's true. That's what I've heard. Right. Now, if that is
part of that is
now, if that is
part of it is changing from Joseph Smith's our prophet to Joseph Smith was kind of a guy that started at this.
Yeah,
he made a lot of mistakes. Being very clear with history. Hey, look, the history is a lot more complicated than the Mormon Church or the RLDS has been teaching, and all those things. And the internet age is forcing an even quicker rate of that happening. And so it does depend. If the internet age, if the age of information means women are subject for the next 5,000 years still, I'm sure a lot of women would be protesting.
Well, and I think you bring up an interesting point with the internet age, because I think the fatal flaw, and this is something I never understood when I joined the church, like, before I went back to my Hindu faith, is that it's about progress, which is fine, right? I seek enlightenment, and many people seek, spiritual fulfillment in a variety of ways. But the LDS Church specifically talks about change, and doctrines change, and policies change. But if the doctrine changes, then how is it true?
That's
in the first place.
Yeah,
and so so that's kind of my thinking, is they're going to have to stop changing at some point, or they're going to have to make different changes. And I think one of the things for the title, the conference predictions, I'm predicting, because of the Jared Halverson fiasco, which that blew up way more than I expected. Yeah. I honestly think they're going to bring out a couple women from the Relief Society to talk about, a potential faith conflict or faith crisis and why they stay. So that way that can like counterbalance, all the women going after Jared Halverson and saying, listen to women, And then I think the church is going to do that so they can say, we are listening to women. Women are speaking right now. So.
Well, to argue against my own point, because Diamond Dave, you've made some incredible points there about the ancient religions that are still maintaining that. I almost think it's like a Jenga game where there's only a certain number of pegs you can pull out before the tower tumbles. So if they do admit to, well, Joseph Smith was just a regular guy, he made some errors, then in turn they can say, well, then the temple ceremony is not valid, and this revelation's not, and that revelation's not, and then the church tumbles and falls. So it's kind of a conundrum.
No, I think
the one thing about this show is it's crazy conference predictions. It means like maybe the next 10 or 20 years. And so we know that tomorrow they're not going to announce any big changes or anything like that, but there could be some little things announced on Sunday.
I'll be right back.
I did want to make a comment on why it's so slow. Did anyone catch Elder Renlund's comments about women in the church?
Earlier this week or something, he said we have to do more for women.
Yeah, he said we have to do more, but within the framework that God has set. And did he give any specifics as to what those things are? I mean, he was very vague, very non-committal. And the thing that I thought was most relevant is he pushed the puck down the goalpost when he said, and the Lord hasn't told us why these things are the way they are, but we know, we have to do them. So he's saying exactly what Randy is alluding to, which is like, we need to change, but are we going to change? No specifics there. But when we do change, it's going to be slow enough so it doesn't hurt all the people who are conservative and used to the way things are.
And the people who are in the church will think that the slow changes are part of the restoration.
It's a frog in the boiling water.
That's trying to balance.
It's a frog in the pot of boiling water, but from the opposite direction. So instead of getting, liberal people to join, they're now doing the same method to try and keep the conservatives in, which I think is interesting.
I feel for them because it's a lose-lose. Like if they progress, they lose the conservatives, and if they don't progress fast enough, they lose the rising generation and the progressives. They can't win.
No. Well, and I mean, here's the thing. I don't think they need to win at this point because they're, they have hundreds of billions of dollars. They have Gen Z and young generations in other countries. I don't think they need to win. I think at this point they need to maintain because from a PR marketing standpoint, I mean, they're getting hit from all directions. They're getting hit from, various podcasters. They're getting hit from the internet. They're getting hit from people leaving and sharing their experiences. I think they're probably going to the best marketing move in a situation like this, just being a public figure myself, is you just batten down the hatches. You just kind of grind through it. And you just keep on going. If you make it's kind of like driving a car in a winter storm, right? You're grinding through, you're going a little bit slow, but you got to go from point A to point B. And you don't want to do any, you obviously turn with the turns, but you don't want to make any drastic judgments.
There wasn't a movement to free slaves. There wasn't a movement to free slaves in 1859. That wasn't the beginning of it, right? And there wasn't a movement for women to get the vote in 1920 or whatever year it was. And there wasn't, civil rights, was something that took years and years and decades to happen as well. And so all these things are progressive things that actually did happen. And so
it has a political feel.
I'm going to start this.
It is political.
It's like politics.
Well, I have to head off, but I wanted to make two more comments before I sign off.
Okay, So make some of your predictions or comments.
Yeah, number one is I think the biggest change that they're going to announce in this upcoming conference is they are going to have a woman speaker in the priesthood session, and they're going to pat themselves on the back for being so progressive in that. And the other comment, just to follow up on what we were just talking about, is the book, The Innovator's Dilemma. I think Diamond Dave is spot on with his critique of how the church works, and they need to maintain. And it's all predicted if you look at the church as a business in The Innovator's Dilemma. You have high growth and profitability for a long time, and then once you reach a certain point, you stagnate, and the best choice you have is to just maintain. And that is exactly how I view the actions of the church. It just makes the most sense if you view it as a business.
That's a good point.
That's right.
Okay, gotta go.
So
Love you guys.
Have a good one, buddy.
Okay,
Thanks, Kendall.
I'm going to start.
I want to go off on a
little.
little. Okay. I got to go on a rant here in a minute.
Okay. But let's get to another point, and then because these are additive and they're just crazy predictions, and this is what I wanted to make sure that we got through them all.
Top reasons people are leaving, or not staying, or not joining, is they're simply not going to join a homophobic and transphobic religion, particularly if they're coming from a secular starting point, which in Britain, hardly anyone's religious anymore. It's the rarest entity. You are mostly trying to convince secular people to become religious, and they're going to look at that and think, God of love. Are you kidding me? What's going on? And it is a big change. It had me, for all of us, we've had to really change if we've become LGBTQ allies. Often it is step by step, tiny incremental baby steps to reframe things, to not be horrified by something that used to seem so depraved and awful, to spend time meeting and talking to our LGBTQ friends and seeing their lives from their perspective. It takes some time to change, but it's happening.
Love is love.
Hey. Brilliant.
That's my little support right now.
Yeah.
And they are human beings. They're fellow human beings. They're wonderful people in almost all cases. And, same rate of wonderfulness, throughout the whole spectrum. And, they have.
Spring is all about fresh starts, getting your life in order, resetting routines, decluttering. But if you've been feeling,
I had an uncle who was gay, and when I was young, I was maybe 20, and I was just felt sorry that he could not officially be connected to his companion, his partner, his boyfriend, whatever they called it at the time, And I remember our family loved him, but they also sort of othered him at the same time. They would make some jokes in front of him and then behind his back, and it was just kind of a sad situation. It's so much nicer, maybe even so much more Christ-like, to love your fellow human beings in that way and be accepting. And so.
Jesus was very clear that the definition of Christianity is not the easy wins. It is that you go and walk with the people that society rejects the most, that considers the most lost. And that's a test of Christianity that we're failing in many ways. However, I think there's a lot of goodwill. My stake, my ward members have been amazingly and at times surprisingly supportive of our LGBTQ members. I think there's very few families now that don't have an out LGBTQ person in them. It changes everything.
And I think almost
look at things differently.
The essence of the Mormon Civil War is that there seems to be Pharisees at the top and Christians at the bottom. The loving people are in the wards, right? At a higher rate.
But there is absolutely. But there is a dynamic that also threatens that, which is why I think our window of opportunity for these reforms is getting narrower each year as well. Even while it seems inevitable that these things have to happen, that most of the more liberal-minded people, the more tolerant people, are being driven out and have been for decades. There's been a relentless drive to only retain and approve of the people who are least likely to think that way. That we're keeping our Pharisees with, as Richard Bushman, the historian, said, we're pandering to the grandmothers of San Pete County at the cost of keeping their grandchildren in the church, which is a disaster because then they die and then you have no church.
That's right.
And that's absolutely the dynamic that's been going on in my area. Yeah.
Spencer Kimball had a very narrow window of opportunity. He brought up the subject of allowing blacks to have the priesthood when coincidentally 3 of the top opposers of that policy happened to be out of the state on assignment.
Yeah.
So that was definitely.
One was in hospital, one was in Ecuador.
One was in hospital.
So they did it without him.
Yeah. And so what do you have next?
Okay, so I love that. I think stuff to do with common consent. We have to bring back democracy. I think we wouldn't have made most of the terrible mistakes that have alienated huge swathes of our population. We wouldn't have had the church embarrassing itself to have to keep backtracking. I don't think the November policy would have flown, which then had to be reversed 3.5 years later. I don't think we'd have had the infamous oral sex gate with Spencer Kimball, which only lasted 9 months, including questions about forbidding oral sex in the Temple Recommend interview. We wouldn't have, the racism would not have lasted anything like as long, or even come in the first place potentially, if the collective wisdom of the whole membership had been powerfully consulted in decision making. And this is tricky because we used to a very authoritarian top-down sort of system because that's what we've got used to. But it's been amazing to learn that in the first era of the church, they used to have heated debates in conference and then vote. And the example buried deep, but there now in the church history supportive resources for studying church history and doctrine and covenants put out by the church is the conference recorded in Times and Seasons where Joseph Smith wanted to get rid of Sidney Rigdon from the first presidency. Sidney and his supporters kind of argued back. They had a heated debate. They had a vote, and the membership voted to keep him in the first presidency, and Joseph Smith accepted that. Which
That's right.
And the whole people's minds today
the whole
think that was possible.
Succession crisis after Joseph Smith was murdered.
Yeah.
There was debate, and somehow Brigham Young won by saying, "I'll be a caretaker until the next prophet." Evacuated the saints to Iowa, and then sort of had the Quorum of the 12 take over leadership by slowly getting people on that side and breaking away from the losers of the
Meet the new standard in sleep. This is Pod 4 Ultra.
The debates, right? You had Sidney Rigdon saying, "I have claim to it." You had James Strang. You had who was the first historian? I don't know. Was he in the church at the time? Whitmer? No, he probably wasn't. But
back to comments, and we'll add to the stage a new member of the audience. And I have to click. Oh no, wrong button.
Mr. Tim.
Right,
good afternoon.
So I can't see. Hello.
Hello.
Internet friends.
Oh, my God. You found me in my cell and have reached out. I can finally break the silence. The glass is shattered. The New World cult doesn't listen to you. No, anyway.
Yeah,
somebody posted a link. I don't know how I got here. I'm just kind of listening.
So where do you live?
I live in Kent, Washington, which is south of Seattle.
Okay.
Well, I'm in Spokane, so we're almost neighbors.
Okay, so down the street from you is Deer Lodge, Montana. I don't know if you've heard of it. Missoula, Deer Lodge, I-90.
Sure, yeah.
I didn't expect to be talking. I've been silenced for so long. Wow, the pandemic I talked to it. I only can see my face in a bitty little box here, but this is kind of fun.
This is a show about crazy conference predictions, and we're reviewing an episode from last year that I did with Peter Bleakley. So we're doing like a reaction to my own show, because a year ago I only had maybe 400 subscribers, and now I have more. And so,
congrats!
Wow. Well, feel free to cut me out or edit me out or something like that. I didn't expect any inclusion, but I've managed to be excommunicated from the Baha'i faith and the Mormon Church for basically right. So the running joke is I've been excommunicated from the World Unity Movement, and you can do it too.
There you go.
Well, you won't be excommunicated from the. You'll definitely not be excommunicated from the post-Mormon community. This is a community that I've found that I finally feel like I belong.
There are a lot of good people, and then there's also Diamond Dave. And so, Dave,
I want to say this as a very conservative Hindu. I have questions, but I'm also kind of impressed.
Well, that's I haven't heard of a conservative Hindu. I think we're on to something here. The whole church becomes conservative Hindus. Wow.
Yeah, well, no, it's I'm kind of an anomaly. I was a convert to the Mormon Church, and then I left due to a faith conflict because there are similarities. And then when a series of events happened, combined with being unable to reconcile some theological things, I just left. So, yeah, that's kind of my thing. But on the video, I find it interesting, and I think this is another kind of fatal flaw of the LDS Church is Peter Bleakley talks about going back to a democracy. And I think when it comes to at least just my worldview and how I view religion and other world religions, it's not a democracy. It's very top down, right? And I think this is part of the problem that the church has, is because it has that history, and it, you have the option, or the ability rather, for multiple people on all levels to give opinions, on top of what I mentioned earlier, that the church teaches, that doctrines can change and policies can change and things like that. essentially it kind of shatters the foundation, in my personal opinion, because if you have like a doctrine that can change, and then you have a bunch of people who don't like that doctrine that can just vote to change it, then how is that like of God? How is that divine truth? And that goes back to what Randy pointed out as well. It's kind of like the Jenga game where it's just, you get to a point, you pull out too many pieces and the thing falls down.
Oh, that's a good point, Dave. You know, you look at our democracy now and what's going on in our nation right now. We're ready for a civil freaking war because half of thinking this way and the other half are thinking this way. Can you imagine if the church became a democracy, the arguments that would ensue and the people that would walk away? It's like everything that all of our predictions end up people walking away.
We're already in the social civil war, Randy.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, within the gospel itself, you know, I can just imagine if we voted on who we wanted to lead us.
And then to go along with that, this goes along with my rant, actually, because when you have that kind of those cracks in the foundation and you have the democracy with people voting on different doctrines and different things, right? What are they voting on? Well, the doctrines and the things at General Conference that I have heard are very vague and ambiguous. You know, like Jared Halverson like did this roundabout way of saying, you know, women do all the invisible labor and we need you to come back. I mean, to me, and I mean, I'm obviously a guy, but to me, it sounded like he was saying, get back in the kitchen.
Yeah.
That's what, and exactly. I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm like, I would respect you more if you just flat out said that. Like, you know, because I wouldn't agree with that. But like I've talked, I think, with Debbie and Maven and other people, and I think we can all agree there's at least an appreciation for honesty. And if instead of Jared Halverson doing this roundabout way of saying women do all the invisible labor and they're leaving because of it and they need to come back, just get back in the kitchen and let the chips fall. I mean, I think people would at least appreciate the honesty more, even if that's a terrible thing to say.
Yeah, because he's like, get back in the pews. Literally, he said that. He didn't say come up on the stand. Get back and take your place, like in the kitchen.
Yeah, and I mean that and that's something that's kind of bothered me kind of throughout my journey moving to Utah and just in Mormonism is like people talk very vaguely and very in an ambiguous way. And that's why my fiance, she's in Mongolia. She's born and raised Mongol. And that's like, she's been to the US and she's like, Americans are two-faced and they're confusing and they never say what's on their mind. And like just hearing the General Conference and being in discussion, I'm like, yeah, I definitely can see that. I think the church would actually have more members if they were very concise in their speech. Because I mean, you look at Islam, for instance, and I'm going to bring up Islam and Hinduism to kind of prove the point that Islam is very specific of what to do with infidels. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows it. They don't beat around the bush. There is no, oh, well, yeah, you know, apostates go to outer darkness, but they don't have the fullness of Christ, so we don't really know where they go. They might end up in the celestial kingdom. Islam is like, they die. And like, that's it. Everyone knows where Islam stands.
That's interesting.
I don't know where the LDS church stands, and I like keep tabs on it, right? Because we're all here speculating on where the church is going to go. Like nobody like really can guess where it's going to go because
I am an angel. I'm sent to you. I'm going to tell you where the church is going to go. No. Oh, and I just interrupted. That was so rude. I have to excuse myself from this meeting now. No, I'm joking around. I should mute myself.
Please stay.
What if there's something in the Baha'i faith called a universal house of justice? it's an actual building on Israel. It's 9 people, but it's like the decoy. But Christ's coming would result in a lot of things. I feel like just launching into this, but the Baha'i faith is like a recipe for a paradise with its own calendar and its own prophetic origins in Iran in the 1800s. And then somebody in Montana said they were the Joshua of the faith, and he's buried only a few hours from Spokane in Missoula. But I should probably just sort of, I have no idea how I got here, other than thank you for the invitation.
Sure.
I still don't know how I got here, because Gene invited me to come on his podcast several months ago, and I'm like, I have over 110,000 followers. No. And then I started watching, and then I ended up appearing on these things, right? On these, discussion panels. And then I'm like, all right, I'm going to take a step back and prep to get married, prep to move to Mongolia. And I'm still here. I don't know how I'm here either. It's okay. It's a black hole. You just show up here. You just get here.
Here is cyberspace, right?
Yeah, it's all chaos.
Zoom meetings in the celestial kingdom. How about that? You just
I'm
kind of
gonna go back to the show, and we'll listen to the next segment.
Some other people, and so so along with common consent.
So common consent decision making. So what we need to see, I predict at this conference,
crowdsource decision.
There will be, but the point is, this is already in our scriptures, which I think is amazing. The Polar Great Christ makes very clear that God runs his heaven by consent. There was the war in heaven wasn't people firing lasers at each other. It was a debate about ideas, and the people voted. A third voted badly and got kicked out. But
and it wasn't God saying, "Okay, every spirit, you have to use your moral agency to agree with me and Jesus."
That's all.
That didn't exist.
Although that's how they spent. That's how they're trying to teach it now, though, which is outrageous. No, it was open debate, and God trusted the majority in a situation of informed consent and debate to make wise decisions. That's the whole point. We are gods in embryo. We're not stupid. We have that potential to get things right. The Book of Mormon teaches that democracy is God's far preferred system of secular government. That it teaches that it's better to have democracy even than a righteous king. And they had prophet kings, but the risks are too high that the one person can tip the whole nation one way or another. And that's one of the lessons from the Old Testament that we learn.
Probably by a righteous prophet drinking a cup of coffee. That would probably make them unrighteous, just like that.
It's all it would take.
Speaking of coffee, we could bring back.
So, no, sorry, just to finish.
Oh, yeah, finish that.
I just finished my point that that the Doctrine and Covenants in Section 26 and other places that talk about doing all things by common consent, and Section 107, which divides power equally between First Presidency.
Imagine making $453,000 in a single month as an affiliate marketer.
An ad.
I want that.
Quorum of 12 apostles, first quorum of 70, and stake high councils or high priests' quorums. They're all equal. They can discipline each other. The prophet can be excommunicated by any bishop or disciplined by any bishop convening a council of 12 high priests. And it says specifically because the prophet is no different to anyone else. They're not royalty. They're not a king. They're just one of us. And so democracy is... And people keep saying to me, but it's not democracy. What are you saying? Well, it is, because in functioning democracies, political parties have a vision, a manifesto, a purpose. Their leaders propose people for you to vote for. So it's not like the people deciding who the candidates are. The establishment, the leadership establishment in that government system proposes candidates, but then we check them out and decide if we're supporting or voting for them. If we vote opposed, then they have to propose someone else. That is exactly the same as government's work.
About what the direction they should go on certain issues. They talk about important issues, and they make decisions. In America, they call it a platform, where a party will support these positions on these issues. And so, that's all part of it. And
so democracy is in our scriptures. It's how God runs heaven. It's how governments should run, and it's how the church is meant to be run. Until very recently, which said that that common consent doesn't just apply to people's callings. It should apply to doctrine, what is canonized as scripture, policies, and anything else that impacts the lives of the saints. Obviously,
my understanding
doing it, but it was there in the Institute manual. Someone thought it was the right thing, as it should be, because that's what it means to do everything by common consent.
That's right. My understanding that they had in the early days of the church a scripture committee. They would try to see which of Joseph Smith's revelations were good enough, let's say, to be in the canon.
Yeah.
And maybe and we know that they have taken away scriptures from the canon. They took away the lectures on faith, They took away some other things that were just right in the accepted canon. And so we should bring that back as well. Well, right? You talk about common consent. It boils over into what should be scripture now, right? And so, and along with that,
question.
Section 89 in the Doctrine and Covenants is the word of wisdom. Now, early on, for I don't know, 50, 70 years, I don't know how long, it was just a suggestion. It was just a good health code. And then at some point they changed it to, you have to obey it, as if any of God's suggestions are really God's laws. That's how I remember hearing it. And we need to take it back maybe to the way it was and let people learn things and govern themselves.
Or absolutely, or at least do it properly, like it says on the tin. Which is, I'm quite happy with banning tea and coffee. I'm surrounded by freaking caffeine addicts. It's not healthy. It's really bad for them. They leave their drug paraphernalia all over my desks when I'm teaching at school. There's like cold, half-drunk coffee everywhere. It's like finding the foil wrappers of the heroin addicts and the needles in the children's playground. So I've no time at all for these tea and coffee addicts. And they all have, they're like, oh, I must get my coffee or I can't be human. That's slavery. Free yourselves. So
it's much better if
I totally agree.
If those things were urged by, what's it called? When you, in order to preserve your priesthood, you have to encourage people with kindness and gentleness and not by
gentle persuasion.
Gentle persuasion, right? So that exists, right? That's part of the teachings, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're not going to do things that way, take it out.
So Gene?
Yep.
So here's what I'm thinking. You want crazy conference predictions?
Yeah.
They're going to get up and they're going to announce that doctors have found that caffeine in a limited amount is healthy for your heart, and they would encourage each member to drink a cup of coffee, because I gave up my salvation for coffee and now they can't take it away from me. They'd have to pry it out of my cold, dead hands.
That's right. Part of that is to use science, like use science more. God gifted people, if they believe in God and they believe that they have their creation from God, God gave everyone brains. And we have a whole universities that are using their brains collectively. And we have sciences and we have organizations, and now we have artificial intelligence that is hopefully helping. But anyway,
the only time
more scientific approach to these things.
The only time the church acknowledges science is when it's to their benefit, not to their detriment. So they're probably never going to say that caffeine is good for you, or that alcoholic wine is good for your heart, or all those things, even though the science says so.
Well, they're starting to say that health sciences are better than the bishop saying what he thinks God's telling for a family in the ward. So they have been moving towards that direction.
They're moving that way, yes.
You're right. Historically, yes.
But hot drinks.
I got my caffeine right here. I got my caffeine right here, and I got nicotine pouches. So, I mean, it is what it is. I just have one question.
You're set.
I have one question. What the hell? And the reason why I asked this question is I didn't know that the War of Heaven was a debate. I thought it was like an actual war. That's how it was taught to me. But now I'm hearing it's a debate that sounds even wackier than the War in Heaven to me.
Right.
The second thing is scripture committees, common sense, common consent. So people voted, according to Mr. Bleakley, people voted on whether or not Joseph Smith's visions were good enough for scripture. Yet, that's the Nicene Council. That's what the Catholics did. And the Mormons accused the Catholics of going apostate because men, corrupted the scriptures in the Nicene Council. How is this not a Mormon Nicene Council? What is the difference?
Tim might know a little bit more about this than I am, since he was alive back when the Nicene Creed was actually written.
The Nicene Creed was basically where the Bible was put together, and they voted on there were 3 conclaves or meetings where they decided on what would and wouldn't go in the Bible and what to leave and take out. You got to remember too that there were rabbis, Pharisees, and Sadducees there also deciding these things, not just Christians.
Wow.
So Jews were there deciding along with the Christians what to keep and put in and
but also out. During Joseph's time, there were restorationists everywhere. people were trying to get back to basics or whatever.
No.
That's all part of the Protestants. It's all part of the Reformation. It's all part of, all the different things. People wanted to do religion their way, their culture's way, right? And that's all anything ever did. So the church actually, Dave, didn't make that an emphasis until like 100 years later. And they just bring teachings in and out as they see fit.
The word of wisdom.
It's still the Nicene Council.
The word of wisdom didn't become a commandment until the 30s with Heber J. Grant.
That's right.
Up until then, it was there was spittoon in the Salt Lake Temple, probably in the Manti and the Logan Temple and the St. George Temple, for all we know. But
and for a great price, the Book of Abraham wasn't scripture until like the 1870s or something like that.
70s, 80s, yes.
Maybe 80s.
Hey, Tim.
Yes.
Who interpreted the word of wisdom to decide that coffee and tea were part of that? Because it never mentions that.
Hiram Smith said hot drinks.
Yeah.
That's what we were taught.
There's a lot of hot drinks that aren't coffee and tea.
Well, back then, though, there wouldn't have been. Well, in America, they wouldn't have known about the drinks in South America at the time. All they knew about was coffee and tea were the only hot drinks.
And there was actually a medical professor, a professor of medicine, who said that even like hot soup was bad for your whole constitution. And so people had philosophies. People wondered what caused people to die. They didn't have very good microscopes or studies programs or anything like that. People's brains and sciences, weren't as good at the time, And so anyway, let's see. But that's my prediction, that the word of wisdom will go back to being just a word of wisdom and not a commandment, because it says right in the thing, not a commandment.
Hallelujah. Amen.
The word of wisdom. I think it's true, because it starts with, because of conspiring men in the last days. I mean, there are entire countries in this world now in ruin because of drugs, because of the drug cartels, the cocaine.
For just walking through the town, all kinds of things. And now maybe part of the word of wisdom could be.
Oh, excuse me.
If you have to wipe yourself raw just to get clean,
that was actually me.
Regimen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's a principle, and it's about that principle.
Someone clip that, please. Perfect timing.
How you doing? I can't eat you. You can. That's not fair. Kind of bright in here.
And
is it just me?
No,
I think something's broke.
Much.
And you know what I've noticed?
But also, is it not something playing?
Who's this?
Yeah.
And so,
shall I tell you what those dietary rules are?
They
have two parts. One, your church is paying a fortune for your private health insurance.
There's one.
Number two is you might be profit if you don't die. That's a huge motivator to stay alive, isn't it? And to sort your health out. If you don't drop dead, you could be God's mouthpiece on earth.
You get to have all your pet projects be the course that the church takes.
That would get me on there. I've got an exercise bike. We've got one. I don't know if you can see it behind me. There's the handles. So it's quite good for hanging clothes on. Occasionally we even use it. We're determined this year to get our act together for our difference. It's, oh, why don't you smoke? You're weird. And all of that becomes a distortion of what the region should be.
You talk about working too hard. There are some callings in our wards where people actually do a lot of work, and maybe they should be compensated for that. Maybe bishops and Relief Society presidents should get some sort of stipend for all their efforts. We have, doctors and ambulance drivers and, police officers that are doing good work, but they're also getting compensated. Why not? If we're compensating the top leaders, we have enough money. Let's compensate the people at the front line.
I think that's completely reasonable, because we are paying it turns out our apostles, our 70s, and our mission presidents all get the same salary of around $160,000 a year, plus huge amounts of expenses, which puts them in the top 1 to 2%, really, at least top 5% of incomes in Britain and America, two of the richest nations on earth.
And most of that is
completely outrageous.
Most of that is on top of whatever their profession was in life that they're receiving, retirement or Social Security or anything like that, and or the savings accounts that they might have accumulated as high up.
They're coining it, while claiming that we don't have a paid clergy, while teaching priestcraft. Although interestingly, I haven't heard a talk on that for years, because now we know that they're doing it, so they're a bit embarrassed. I think every revelation we get about the sins that the apostles are committing, suddenly there's a topic that disappears from general conference talks. They're not going to have many left soon. I haven't heard one about lying for a very long time, because they've been caught lying so much. It's fascinating how they suddenly stopped talking about the thing they got caught doing. Nothing about the occult for years, since we found out Joseph Smith was up to his eyeballs in it. So absolutely, one of the most interesting things I found doing some research for my podcast was that until the early 20th century, stake presidents and bishops used to get a salary, because it is a full-time job.
Joseph Smith Sr. Joseph Smith Sr. made money giving out blessings, right?
Yeah, your patriarchs got paid. Patriarchal blessing. The bishops would get 10% of the tithing that their ward paid. Stake presidents got, I think, 10% of the tithing their stake paid. And in a way, that's
D. Michael Quinn
income.
provided those figures for us. I think D. Michael Quinn did in one of his books.
Skills training, as well as what church is better at now.
And training on the resources available.
Yeah, but don't send them to Jody Hildebrand,
Oh.
What do you think about paying people who put in a lot of work around the church?
Definitely.
Yeah, let's make that change.
Let's.
I think there's money somewhere.
Well, let's make it retroactive, because heaven knows I put in so many hours serving.
We all have.
Right?
We all do.
I don't know if they will do this, because I'm thinking about, the paid clergy and stuff like that. And that means that they would have to do background checks.
They should.
Really?
Yeah. Well, because it would technically be employment, wouldn't it? So state and federal law would require them to do like background checks and things like that.
But they would also lose their accountability. If you're an employee of the church, then the church is responsible. As long as you're not an employee and you're a volunteer, the church can't be held responsibility.
Exactly, yeah. So that could be why they don't pay them, because if it's volunteer, like you said, they don't have the lack of, they can't do the whole, well, it's not a paid clergy position, we're not liable.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So I don't know, that might be a factor.
They could just call it a parsonage for every single person.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. For me personally, on this particular topic, I'm kind of indifferent to it. I'd much rather kind of focus on for changes when it comes to abuse or real situations that cause physical harm to another person. That's something. And I mean, I'm out of the church, so my opinion is going to be not listened to anyway. But yeah, I think personally the big changes. You'd be surprised, bro. But yeah. No, I get what you're saying. But yeah, so it's this is kind of when it comes to for me, I have a priority list. And it's this for me personally, just kind of near the middle to kind of if they change it, cool. If they don't, it's not going to have an impact, I don't think, on the congregation as a whole.
Okay.
Maybe they're going to reduce the tithing to 5%.
So everybody gets a 5% raise.
Right?
Well, that sounds like the prosperity gospel. You might be changing churches there.
There you go.
Right.
No.
It's all blessings from heaven, right?
Survival is a big deal. That's something spiritual. Providence is how God provides in your life, and where he mysteriously provides for people who have no belief in God and different religions, and they seem to prosper just fine.
and what's the difference between the prosperity gospel and making a tribute to the temple at, I don't know, Tim was there, wherever the temples were in Greece, so that the Neptune wouldn't cause your ship to sink, or that some other god wouldn't send lightning bolts to damage your village. Those are the old-fashioned prosperity gospel types of, donating to God, the sacrificial virgin, right? That would be who here would we sacrifice? Dave, are you willing?
Sure. Why not?
Sacrifice yourself. It's the ultimate.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Well, you bring
it
up
would
an
be a
interesting
sacrifice for me to revert to being a virgin again. That's what it would be.
Well, you bring up an interesting point because it's like, what is the difference? And this is actually something I talked about. It's Christianity in India, right? And what you'll have, like the Dalits, the tribals, the untouchable caste. They fall under what's called OBC status, or other backwards caste reservation. Basically, it means they get money from the government, they get food, they get government assistance, right? And so you have to be Hindu to be in that caste to qualify for these benefits. But Christians come along and say for 10% of your income, you get a guaranteed, you check all the boxes, you go to heaven when you die, right? So for them, they're covering their bases because it's like, oh, I get money from the government for free. And these people are giving me a guaranteed, caste elevation. So I'll just take 10% of the free money and give it to Christianity because, well, I mean, if Christianity isn't true, it costs me nothing because it's not my money anyway. And, if I can get a paid elevated caste boost in the next life, why would you not do that? So it's done that way in many different cultures, just how Gene said.
There you go. All right, I'll play this more.
Because there's been a lot of that. There's a whole industry, someone to refer your flock to. What are the professional criteria here? In the desert sun. I mean,
what's the next item on our agenda here?
I don't know. Let's say something else financial. Let's go with tithing. So end it. Stop it now.
Avoid these 5 knee pain mistakes. Most people get them wrong. If you're struggling with knee pain, you might...
Stop it. We were promised. Joseph, tithing used to be 10% of your annual increase, which in the agricultural economy of the mid-1800s, I think was regarded as an annual profit of about 6% on your assets. So you're only paying 10% of 6%. It was microscopic, what tithing actually meant originally. Then Lorenzo Snow whacked it up temporarily. He promised to clear the church's debts and said, and that had a caveat of who has capacity, who is able to pay. If you've got enough money
to afford it. If you have means,
who have means.
So obviously, if you're poor,
has means.
If you're poor and struggling to put food on the table, you're not someone who's in the category of being a tithe payer. And
then the lying began.
Yes.
The absolute shameless, financially exploitative, sinful lying began. That they started to really appreciate much larger whacks of money coming in. So in all the teaching manuals throughout the 20th century up till recently, when that quote from President Snow about paying 10% was used in manuals, they put ellipses in to remove the who has means caveat. They taught it as everyone must pay 10% of their income. They emphasized that this is not 10% of profits, it's 10% of gross. If you want gross blessings, you're paying 10% on your gross, not your net. And definitely
I remember hearing an apostle come to our Oakland conference building and all the leaders in the area. And it's the first time I ever heard him. He said that very same thing. If you want net blessings, pay on the net. If you want gross blessings, pay on the gross. So it's like, the more you pay, the more blessings you will get, which kind of doesn't seem like a Jesus-y thing to say either.
Yeah. One of the most embarrassing things I've had to face and admit myself, and mercifully it's not as bad as some people have had to grapple with, is I totally fell for the utter lunacy of the idea that paying 10% tithing is fair for everyone at every income level. Because on a shallow level, you think, well, it's proportional to your income. That's fine. We're all making the same kind of sacrifice.
Sounds equal.
Utter nonsense. Losing 10% of your income when you're poor and you have no spare cash means your children go hungry. And these hypocritical, avaricious swines stand at pulpits in general conference teaching that tithing is for the destitute as much as anyone else. And
that's right. Go without food and pay your tithing, and God will find a way, or go to the bishop to get food. But pay your tithing first.
At the same time, those people justify to themselves receiving an income from the tithing in the top 5 or less % of income levels in their country because they can't possibly ever risk that happening to them. They couldn't possibly be within a million miles of having to choose between their general authority children going without food or paying tithing. And this is how the church fetishizes the suffering of the poor. And they insist that the destitute save for a mission, at least to some extent. And they tell these stories of these poor people in other countries than white America who are spending years saving for a mission as if this is great, when they wouldn't allow that to happen to their own children at all. They would never put up with that kind of sacrifice being required of their family. They just wouldn't. And it's this displacement. They both exploit the international poor of the developing world while patronizing them and literally making spiritual fetishizing out of their suffering that they would.
Finances, if you ended tithing, there could be transparency. Yep. So that would be a prediction that they're going to announce, bringing back the financial reports. And not only that, maybe have a website that says where all the money is and how much is it and where it's invested.
Like all the other churches.
So there you go. A couple of things. Transparency in finances and eliminating tithing. What do you think about those?
Yeah, no. I am not. I'm going to be the cynical one today. I don't see that happening. Transparency, maybe a bit more. That I think is more reasonable. But I mean, getting rid of tithing? No, I don't. No.
and what he means is what the promise was, that only those who could afford it would pay tithing. If people still wanted to donate, because even though people have maxed out on their tithing and they're billionaires, they still buy property and donate to the church to build a temple. They give money so that the BYU can build a gymnasium or something like that, or they donate other money somewhere for some other project or building that will get them maybe their second anointing. I don't know. Anybody else think about that?
But that's another peg out of the Jenga tower, because they've taught since I was a baby how it says in Malachi, that you're to give 10%, and it defines tithing. So if they change that, that's another peg out of that Jenga that could start to crumble the financial tower.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, because that's part of the that's more than just like a commandment. Like that's core doctrine, right? I mean, this is like a non-negotiable thing you take out. I mean, I would argue that some of the changes that people discuss that they want to see the church can't pull out would be like me as a Hindu suddenly eating beef. It is unheard of. It would not fly. Because if you rip out one thing that seems innocuous, there's so many things that are tethered to it, doctrinally, theologically, culturally, that when you rip it out, it's kind of like doing surgery on an organ. Like the reason why it takes so long is you can't just rip out a kidney. You have to like disassemble everything around it. Otherwise, you're taking out a bunch of other stuff with it. So I think the Jenga analogy, I like that. I like that Jenga analogy, because once you pull one thing out, there's other stuff around it that's going to, get displaced. You pull one of those out, then
we don't forego pork meat anymore, even though it's in the scriptures. And it's been a long time, too long since we've stoned a woman for adultery, if you ask me. But anyhow, so things do change. But yes, a lot of things are super slow to change.
Well, and there's things that can change without pulling a Jenga piece out. Like they may say that it's been revealed that it's not necessary to hold the priesthood in order to pass the sacrament. Maybe the young women can take over passing the sacrament and distributing it without people saying, "Oh, but it says in the scriptures."
Not taking over, but joining in, because they have limited number of youth anyway. A lot of places, the high priests are still helping.
Right, yeah.
Smith promised in General Conference, so at the tail end of this let's get ourselves out of debt thing, in 1909 or 1903.
Try to speed up.
His interest each year. They were
speeding up made us go wrong.
So, anyone heard about building the house of the Lord in Independence, Missouri?
Yeah.
I have a book on that.
There's already a temple there. What do you mean? They already built one.
Well, I guess in the history of the church and I saw something on YouTube. I mean, to me, I don't know where everyone is, but I'm on the West Coast, and Missouri seems kind of far away and random.
Like this way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think
go ahead. I don't even know if I'm interrupting. I was talking about a temple in Independence, Missouri, that it was going to be like a place of commerce. And I learned that from this little book called Upon the Temple Lot. And from what I hear at every general conference is the coming of the Lord, the coming of the Lord, the coming of the Lord. It's all about being organized for the coming of the Lord. That's what I get from general conferences.
Right.
But then here's this little book, and what makes me think is funny is there's all kinds of different religions in Independence, Missouri, including Jehovah's Witnesses. So it's like, well, are they going to be part of that too, or different things? Anyway, but what gives me some credibility to this particular place in the USA is that during the Civil War, there was divisions. There was like 11 southern states and 11 northern states, and Missouri was kind of new. But all of a sudden, I began to see Missouri as, well, I guess that's as the West is expanding, it seems less random to me. Like our government could fall in Washington, D.C., and the Mormons have enough money and their own laws and their own kingdom and their own king to start their own kingdom government from that place.
That's the plan. That's their plan. They already have a temple in St. Louis and Kansas City.
Oh, huh. Well, the funny thing is out here in Washington State, right on an interstate, there's a huge water park called Wild Waves, and people come there and go swimming and stuff. But the announcement is there's going to be a temple, and to me, it's funny that across from a public water park there's going to be a temple, and it's in a place called Federal Way. But it's really kind of exciting because Seattle and Tacoma and Olympia are all really, they're kind of different worlds. So, so I don't say people turn their nose up at going to Seattle, but it's like, well, now I don't have to go as far and I don't have to be in that traffic. And it's a city on a hill.
Maybe to attract the youth, they're going to have baptisms for the dead via water slide.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, well, it's a temple secret. They've been doing baptisms at Wild Waves for the last 30 years. Just they've never told anybody. No, okay.
Wild Waves. I saw the first episode of Righteous Gemstones for the first time a little bit, and they were doing something in a wave machine as part of their ministry, and the waves machine started before they were out. That was part of the comedy. So let me go back and see if I can catch up to this. What the next?
They can say every member is part of the whole church.
The whole point of the Wall Street crash was all the hoarded money and stocks and shares became worthless overnight. It is in extreme danger. Lots of rust is going to go out. Thieves are going to take it. You need to spend it now before it disappears, so you at least do some good with it. There's an urgency there. Stop sitting on 100 billion. It could be gone tomorrow. All of it. All that potential to do good wasted, and that would be an unforgivable sin, based on everything Jesus has taught. And my solution for this is very simple. They will need to announce at conference that we're just going to choose bog standard, any ward anyway. We're going to choose a CTR class of 10-year-old children, leave them in a room for half an hour, tell them they've got a budget of $100 billion. They will know how to spend it like Jesus would want it spent. They will come up with that in half an hour because it's so freaking obvious. Children could work that out. They wouldn't need any adult intervention at all. I think we should just do that because Jesus said to the rich man, give it all up now and save yourself before it's too late. Do that. They will come up with a great list. None of it will be bad ideas. It would absolutely be channeling Jesus. Spend it like the 10-year-olds told you to.
Are there
work that out overnight.
Are there more things on our list still that we need to cover?
Oh, absolutely. So that's tithing.
These car hacks are going to make your life way easier. If you need to increase the range of your car's key fob, place it under your chin. This is because your skull acts.
Oh yeah, let's bring back the membership report, and part of that would be, actually being honest. Like, here's the number of people we don't know where they are. We normally take them off at 110. Yeah. But we're going to put that off to the side, and we're going to say they're not in the membership.
Active membership.
And we're going to go.
Yeah. What is the active membership?
Right.
Yeah. What's the active membership of the church? The real membership, participating, which I think.
If common consent could be taught appropriately, and people started thinking, yeah, that's what we should do, the church would all of a sudden start trimming the roles down to just the people that attend.
I know.
Because they wouldn't want a bunch of people to come in and vote opposite to them just because they've been disaffected from the church for the last 5 years.
Yeah. I when it comes to the membership reports, I honestly don't know why they do them. I have no idea. Like, just in the first place, because other religions don't do this, and
to show that they're growing. That's the only reason, is to show.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's true, like if the church is true, it doesn't matter whether it's growing or not. Is how I see it. You know what I mean, right? And like, remember, me and Tim stayed on one of the after shows, and we just went on the church's website, and we had a lot of fun looking at all these weird, wonderful countries like Kazakhstan that have like wards and things like that.
That's right.
And
Tuesdays with Tim.
Mongolia was one, and India was another, and both have like roughly 12,000 members. And I'm like, oh, cool. I would like to meet people. I'd like to meet people in India who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Most of my followers on Facebook that are in India, in that region, and I can't find any members. Like, nobody's showing up to say, yes, I'm a member and I'm in this country. Like, same thing with Mongolia. Like, my fiance, she came on, she was in the comments with another friend of mine in Romania, where they're both are members. She didn't know what Mormonism was, and my friend in Romania never met a missionary or a member in her whole life. And I'm like, well, why are you putting numbers on the thing? Like, why are you saying we have this many members here and we're growing here in the age of the internet, where any of us can just hop on to like a Romanian chat group or just whatever, as an example, and just be like, hey, how's Mormonism over here? And everyone just goes, what's Mormonism? I'm like, oh, okay. Well, like,
I think in today's Mormon stories, somebody either commented in the chat or somehow they talked about how in one of the South American states that they served in, there was, for a ward, there was like 500 members in the ward, but only like 7 people attended.
That was the girl who he was interviewing. She said only 4 people of the 500 on the rolls were at sacrament meeting.
Yeah, Kate was on.
Kate, yeah. I was reading about, well, actually, I watched a video on it about the technology and how now they can determine how many people are at sacrament meeting by the pings off of the cell phones.
That's right.
Yeah. And I know that doesn't account for kids, but they can do the average of how many kids per family. But that's a lot more accurate, and I don't think the church would want that happening, because then it would become public knowledge that there just ain't that many people going to church.
Yep.
This goes back to my point of, let's just be honest here. Like, because I think if the church were just to be honest in general, first of all, I think it would collapse. But in the perfect world, like, if it were to just be honest and be like, yeah, we're losing members. And if they were honest about it, an outsider like me could just look at it and say, well, that makes sense, because all of Christianity is losing members right now.
That could be a 1 million hit short for me now, Dave, when you said if the church was just honest, it would collapse. I'm just going to see if I can get 1 million hits on that.
But
yeah, I'm trying to learn from you.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, it's like, there could be a case to be made from like the PR side, because like the church is very big on PR, right? So instead of like trying to fluff up numbers, or like, I mean, I'm still on the rolls at my ward, but I don't go, and I haven't paid tithing in, several months. So am I a member? Like, but yeah, so it's just be honest, because if, again, from the PR side, they could say, yeah, we are Christians, and like all other Christian sects, we're losing members too. People won't dig further. They'll just accept it at face value and go, well, that makes sense, and then move on with their day. But if they're hearing, John Dehlin and all these other podcasts out there talking about, the problems with the church, and then they have, the church telling them, no, things are great. Look at all our numbers. Like, there's going to be a drive to dig deeper and find out where the disconnect is.
There's a lot of chapels for sale.
Yeah.
And
You don't
a lot
want
of
that.
buildings for sale. So that's very telling to me.
No.
Well, they're selling the chapels so they can build more temples on each corner. They want a temple on every corner of every street in Utah, pretty much right now.
Right. Yeah. It's a better show.
It's a better show. And I was actually in the Ward Radio Discord last night, and I was talking with some very, very conservative Orthodox members, and one of them openly said that they are min-maxing temples. His opinion was that, and some of it's theological, but he was under the impression that there's either going to be an event, whether it's financial, whether it's some climate related or something.
Return of Jesus.
Yeah, and that the church is focusing on building temples in locations that there may not be enough members to fill them.
Because when you're a god and you're a god over like 1 billion planets, one thing you need on one of them is at least 500 or 600 summer homes.
The only place the church is growing is Africa right now. It's not growing anywhere else in the world. They pretty much mined out all of the Latinos in Central and South America. Russia was a bust. When the wall went down, they thought, we're going to take the gospel there and people will join. Well, it was like most of Europe. I mean, when I was in Germany, I saw maybe 2 or 3 baptisms in my whole mission. And that they're waiting for China to open up, and it's probably going to be a bust too, just like Russia and
Well, India was a bust, because you remember Rebecca Biblioteca did the thing. The Bengaluru temple shut down. Like that's done. That's over. Like that's never going to happen again. And India also stopped issuing visas to missionaries. So not only do you have a temple that started to be built that's just sitting there doing nothing, now you have the government just flat out saying, yeah, we're just not giving missionaries visas anymore. You just can't come here. So India is also a bust.
Well, Tim, why do you think that the church is growing in Africa? What do you think is spurring that growth?
They're mythical in their beliefs in mythology. Their belief in different gods.
Well, they don't know how to use the internet as well as Europe.
No, they do. Yeah. No, they do. No, they do. A lot of my followers are in Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Zambia, People's Republic of Congo, Algeria, and Morocco.
But that doesn't mean the other tens of millions of people in Africa that aren't your fans have access.
No, I mean they do though, because like Africa, like even in villages, it's like India. Even in villages, people have iPhones.
Yeah,
but there's not the CES letter written in Zulu language.
Right.
True, but many speak English.
They speak French. French is the most spoken language in Africa.
Yeah. Well, is the CES letter in French? Tim, get on that.
I don't speak French. Let somebody who speaks French translate it.
I only speak French when the hammer hits my thumb.
Yeah,
that'll work. Pardon my French, right?
Right.
Pardon. But that's what I think. That's why I think it's growing, is because of the Christians came and their belief in all these mythical gods and stuff that and they're not being told about the ban. The priesthood, they're not being told a lot of things. When the internet is everywhere in Africa, then it'll be their downfall for the church. But
yeah. Another key thing too is the Heavenly Mother, because many African traditions are matriarchal. Right. So when you have the Christian side there, and then you have the the concept of like the Heavenly Mother, eternal families, and you even look you read the Book of Mormon and you see a lot of folk magic. That's what Tim is referencing. is they resonate with that. It's not their culture specifically, but because it's folk magic and they have a history of practicing folk magic, they resonate with it.
Yes, it appeals to them.
Yeah.
One of the things that got my attention was that there was an actual Mormon temple in Ukraine. And to me, that's kind of a big deal because you have a lot of collisions there, but yet there's a temple and there's a unifying faith with some resources behind it. So if the church is really gathering Israel and there's like leftover Nazis in Ukraine, then this is a big sign. You know, I mean, I didn't really realize what the Nazi problem was, but apparently there's this nation that called Israel, whether they're true or false, that has problems wherever it goes, and Europe had to expel them to their own state. I don't know if you hear where I'm going with this, but it's like there's this sort of problem of something, but then the church wants to gather that under Christ, and now they have a temple in Ukraine. Hello?
Right now in the Ukraine, a lot of Khazarian Jews are moving there, setting up communities, and they will kill you if you're not one of them to come into their community. So they killed all the Christians, and then the Khazarian Jews, the Khazarian mafia, is coming in there, taking over land before they sign their peace deals and get whatever they're going to get out of it, and they're going to start taking over the country again.
That's why the flights there are $99 round trip, I think.
Really? Wow.
I'm just making that up.
I actually got to go to the Holy Land in Israel to go on the Baha'i pilgrimage to go to their holy sites. My name was on a 7-year wait list, and all of a sudden I got this email saying, I didn't even open it because I thought, well, I can't do this. It's never possible. But because there was conflict there and people didn't want to do this pilgrimage with their families and stuff, I was given a choice of dates for this pilgrimage, and one of them was in a few months, and so I took it. But what I felt about flying into Israel is that I didn't know enough to even appreciate traveling there, but it was pretty cool. And you can see the Shrine of the Bab and be fascinated, I guess.
I was on a 7-year wait list, and then I went on a diet, and now I'm only down to 2 years.
Oh, praise the Lord.
I have just dad jokes are abound in me. So anyway, I'm going to close right now. I forgot that it's dinner time on the West Coast. It's approaching dinner time. And I promised my wife that one of my conference predictions was I'd take her out to a Chinese meal.
You better take her out, Gene.
So we are going to go do that so that my prophecy will come true.
And so, remember tomorrow was Megan's Grateful podcast all day long.
Okay. I haven't received any word on that. Do you?
No, not yet.
I can't remember where we first saw it. Did she announce it in our group? Or,
she announced it in our group.
Yeah. And so
she did a great conference voice, didn't she?
Oh, beautiful.
She did. We're gonna promote right now people's channels. So we got Megan Connor, third verse, and then the Midlife Revolution. And she also is cousin to Lori Vallow. So she's been in Arizona talking about Lori Vallow's bout
trial. I would like to say something.
Okay.
Well, I just got finished listening to John DeLyn's with that girl today, woman.
Kate.
And something that I suspected, she confirmed that the church hides predators. That she said that the only choice they had was excommunication or disfellowship, but there were people who didn't want to disfellowship them and excommunicate. They just want to put them on probation. And she said, no, you can't do that. And she was in confidential records. So the church does protect predators. And Kate just confirmed that for me today in that interview. And I think that is disgusting. That's one thing I've always wondered about with the church is why are they protecting the predators? And it's so they don't want members of the ward to know or anybody else what's going on unless it becomes public. They're keeping it quiet, which is really disgusting.
That's right. Kate Lynn Whitaker. And
Yeah,
she just
Kate.
produced a movie short called Whole Phase.
Whole Phase.
Come out in a few weeks. They got to do post-production work on it. And then that's in hopes of raising, you can use that to raise money to make it a feature film someday. And so good luck to Kate.
Let's support Kate.
John DeLynn announced that he discovered Kate on Ladder Daily Digest.
Yeah.
That's right.
I saw that one.
That made Maven happy. And I was doing a delivery, so I just thumbed up when she texted me.
Cool.
It's like, okay, it didn't give me $1, but maybe it did if I got 5 more viewers out of it. We'll see what happens.
So I want any member listening when they watch conference tomorrow to think about that the church does protect sexual predators. And it's totally disgusting.
Well, you have to re-infiltrate. You have to infiltrate the church, and it's hard to hide a corrupt crime like that. It's sad.
They have their ways. They have their ways. They do it. Just listen to what Kate said, and it's just totally disgusting.
It's also from what I've heard, it's also on a local level with like some of the other ladies that have talked about their experience, because sometimes women don't feel comfortable telling the bishop about it, but they will tell people around them in the ward, and then they'll just be like, oh, well, he's really a good guy. You might be, misinterpreting it, or they might not believe it. It doesn't go anywhere, because if nobody in the ward believes her, why would she go tell the bishop or go to the police?
We had a counselor in a bishopric who was a sexual predator, and I didn't find out about it until he was excommunicated. I was the ward clerk at the time, and I was sitting across from this guy every Sunday looking at him, and I wondered, well, why did he get released? And then the bishop didn't tell me, and the other counselor, they kept it quiet. And then I found out from somebody else why he was excommunicated.
Wow.
So that's how disgusting it is.
My friend, you just ruined my excommunication for me. Thanks a lot. I'm going to flip you all off and say goodbye. No, I'm joking.
Good night. Okay.
We're all going to say goodbye pretty soon anyway. But
somebody reach out. I'd like to participate again.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's nice having you.
Are you on Facebook at all?
I said my name, Zach Lightcap, in one of the comments, and that's my Facebook profile and me.
So my name is Gene Judson, and if you send me a friend request, I will and I will go and mow your lawn if you'll subscribe to my channel.
I live in an apartment building, but we really are having some maintenance issues. Gene with a G.
Yeah.
And then Judson, Judson.
Correct.
Okay.
If you give him a hamburger today, he will mow your lawn on Monday.
That's right. By a future Tuesday.
The millennium is coming. Oh, you'll have fun with this. In the Baha'i era, it's the year 182. So next spring, it'll be 183. There's my Futurama scenario.
183, that was my last batting average as a little leaguer.
Oh, cool. Okay. I hope to the reason why rich people need to convert to the Baha'i faith is because they pay a 19% tax, but no one's really sure if they're actually following it. Okay, no, I'm kind of, yeah. It handles wealth and power pretty well.
That's right. So I actually interviewed Kate, and we talked about that with John DeLynn announced it. That's where he saw it. So that's kind of fun. Anything else coming? So we got Tuesdays with Tim. So on Tuesday at we'll say 7:30 Pacific time, we have a discussion like this, and we pretend we're in Tuesday's living room. I mean, Tim's living room on Tuesday, and he bakes cookies for us, but then he eats them all.
That's right.
And
I'm a cookie monster.
We talk about whatever the hell we want, which sometimes is actually what the thumbnail says.
Yeah, that's right.
Not always. Not always.
Yeah, not always. But
Sometimes.
we try to. And then afterwards we have a after show where we hang out. And we're just a bunch of what's it called? Misfits.
Yes. Misfit toys.
Just doing a show. We have 14 wonderful fans that come and watch us, and the chat is sometimes lively, and we're just hanging out, just chatting. There's a show called Porch Time that has fewer people watching it, and so ours is a better porch time. Ours is living room time. So anyway, we'll see everybody. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Oh yeah, I was going to do something differently. The trend is now to say like and subscribe at the very beginning. John DeLynne's been doing it lately. Other people have been doing it. They also do a little like 1 minute trailer at the very beginning to tease everybody so that they stay to the end. And maybe someday I'm going to do that because Randy is going to help me get into doing things properly so that we can go from 1,400 subscribers to passing up John DeLynne by the end of the year. That's the goal.
And we're trying to contribute to the temple fund. We're trying to raise funds for a new Mormon temple.
Songs mentions what I was going to say earlier. Every time I scroll through shorts or other TikToks or YouTubes or whatever, there's all kinds of ads for, are you a Mormon?
Yeah.
Have you been,
Can I get a lawsuit for the ads?
Yeah,
there's just so many of them. Like I don't know
for
how
all your
they pop
lost
up in my
time, a
feed.
class action suit for our collected lost time of our lives by having those ads come to us.
Yeah, a lot of dancing missionaries, clicking their fingers and walking down the sidewalk singing a catchy tune.
That's right. Mormonism After Dark is on tonight, and I was considering doing this as a marathon so that Mormonism After Dark would only get half of their audience. But I think 14 is way fewer than half their audience, and so
yeah, we got to poach those 3 viewers when we can.
yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Last week, Mormonism After Dark had like 1,000.
It was excellent.
Watchers. The women that they brought on the Almond show were killer.
Yeah.
Everybody go watch last week's Mormonism After Dark. And then they set the stage. Dominoes were falling left and right. Stuff happened.
And if you haven't seen the video that Gene and I did with Amy Hamaker, that is worth the watch. She's incredible.
Yeah.
All hail the Millennial Kingdom.
Can you see it, Valerie?
Right.
Right.
Our show with Valerie Hamaker was really, really good.
Did I say Amy?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why.
Then I said Natalie. And it's really Bob Hamaker was our female guest on the show.
Yeah. Amy is her long lost cousin that we had to communicate with.
Well, in a few weeks, I might be joining you guys from Ulaanbaatar.
You're always welcome, Dave. You're always
I'd be
welcome and
by.
appreciated.
I
You're
used to play the Ulaanbaatar in my college band.
Oh, wow.
Because it sounded like a musical instrument. That's one of my dad jokes I just threw in there. Like
we really need to get you a streaming deck where every time you make a dad joke, you just hit a button and then it's like a sign come up that says applause with like the stereotypical laughing and clapping. Yeah.
That's in the works.
I could help with that.
Somebody said one of the last Tuesdays with Tim was the funniest ever.
Oh, good.
I think they died of a heart attack from laughing too much, though. So we have one less fan. So I'm going to have to tone it down a little bit in the future. Right, everybody?
No.
Like and subscribe. Do the things. It's 2025. When Tim and I were kids, 2025 was never going to happen because
Jesus was supposed
Jesus
to come.
was going to come.
Oh, here's a picture. The Jehovah's Witnesses nailed it. Here he is on a white horse right here.
Uh-oh. Okay.
That's an amazing looking taper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a mighty fine taper right there.
Proof that Jesus is coming. But you know, Jesus, he's been invited to dinner for 2,000 years, and the should I say it, motherfucker never comes.
Well, I'm trying to tell you, he's buried in Montana. That Joseph Smith said Salt Lake, but it's Salt Lick, and that's Deer Lodge. And he grabbed me by the end of my wiener and said, "It's just a bunch of nerve endings."
Okay.
That's what it is.
Man, the party's getting rough here.
And there's nerve endings all the way through, we'll say. All right.
Yeah.
On that note, everybody have a great rest of 2025.
Good afternoon. Good night.
Say goodbye to everybody.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Revelation. God bless.
All
right. Well, no. Tim and
we're not off yet.
Hang out and talk.
You're not off yet. We're still on.